Good morning, dear trainees. Today I would like to discuss with you on the approaches of teaching grammar. Before I come to our topic, I would like to ask you one or two questions. How do we teach grammar? Or what are the approaches that we use in teaching grammar? We have two ways of teaching grammars. So the two kinds of, or the two ways of, or the two approaches of teaching grammars are inductive approach, or we can say method, or deductive approach. What is inductive approach? What do you understand by inductive approach? Again, what do you understand by deductive approach? When we teach a lesson or grammar lesson from inductive approach, we start with an examples. We will give various examples here. After giving a lot of examples, we will observe the sentences. Then, looking at the sentences, we will hypothesis. Then, we will generate rules, or we will conclude, or we will create a theory from these examples. So, let us see some of the examples of inductive approaches. How can we teach noun? Through or by using inductive approach. We will write out different or various sentences. Tom is a good boy. Or you can also say Tom is a brilliant boy. What is the noun here? Let us underline the noun. Here, Tom is a noun. Let us give another sentence. My dog is brown. Here, dog is a noun. I will write another sentence. I live in Imphal. Imphal is noun here in this sentence. I will write one more sentence. I write with a pen. I write with a pen. Pen is noun here. The boys had a race. The boys had a race. Race is noun here. The last sentence. Honesty is the best policy. Honesty is the noun in the sentence. So, looking at these sentences, how can we drive a theory, or how can we create a theory of noun? How can we describe what noun is through this? Tom is name of a person. Dog is name of an animal. Infal is name of a place. And pen is a thing, something to write with. Then the boys had race is an action. And honesty is quality. So, through this example, through this inductive approach of teaching grammar, we can drive a conclusion, we can draw a conclusion, or we can draw a theory, or we can define what noun is. So, noun is name of a person, animal, place, thing, accent, or quality. This is how we teach inductive approach, or how we use inductive method or approach in teaching grammar. But if we have to use deductive method, I would first define what a noun is. Instead of writing all the sentences, I would first describe, or I would first define what nouns. A noun is the name of a word. A noun is the name of a person, place, animal, thing, quality or accent of a person or in a sentence. This is how I will define what noun is. So, the students, can you differentiate between using of inductive approach from deductive way of teaching grammar? We can again state what inductive approach is. In teaching of inductive approach, we start with presentation of some examples to generalize rules and theories. Inductive approach is also known as a scientific method because we observe different sentences. Then inductive approach is also correlated with direct method because we use sentences directly. So the characteristics of So how can we define inductive approach now? it is through examples. We give examples. Then this is specific. We move from specific to general. We move from specific to general. Then it is also a bottom-up approach. Why we say it is a bottom-up approach? Because we start with its what. First, in a sentence, we point out what, or the words, the nouns in the words. We start with words. In a bottom-up approach, we start from smallest. It starts with words, then sentences, then main ideas, then we come to themes. This inductive approach is a bottom-up approach. Then we hypothesize. It is out of the 5-6 sentences, we try to find out the nouns in the sentences. Then we will drive to a theory. From hypothesizing, we will create a theory, or we will come to a conclusion what noun is. Then, when we teach a grammar through inductive approach, it is learner-centered. Learners are participating. We can ask learner to make their own sentences. It is not teacher-centered, but because learners actively participate in the teaching learning process, inductive approach is learner-centered. And we also use a direct method. We don't have to translate. What do we mean by direct method? We can only use the target language even without translation, because sentences don't have to be translated. It's just a simple sentences. When we say direct method, we only use the target language. These are the characteristics of inductive approach of teaching grammar. But if we have to say deductive instead of inductive, if we have to say if we have to explain a grammar or lesson from a deductive approach, what do we do? It will be the opposite of all this. We will start from theory. We will first define what a noun is. Then we will end with examples. First, we define what a noun is. Then, but through this definition, we try to give examples of the things that we want to say. So, inductive would be the opposite of deductive. deductive would be, the opposite of inductive. So we start with theory. We will start with theory. From theory, we're going to give example. What are the process involved in teaching deductive approach? It is a teacher-centered. And it is a teacher-centered approach because teacher explains everything here before asking to students. And we use grammar translation method. In inductive approach, it was direct method, but in deductive approach, we use grammar translation method. In grammar translation method, what we do is we need a text or we need literary works. We can explain. After defining what noun is, we can explain in students' mother tongue. There is, students are less involved. So it is teacher-centered, not student-centered. Here, we don't have to observe, whereas in inductive method, it is scientific method and we have to observe. Here, mainly it is because teacher-centered approach, teacher controls the teaching learning process. Teacher explains everything. Like, if we have to teach a verb through inductive approach, we will again first write some of the sentences. There are 3 types of verbs. But before explaining the different types of verbs, if we have to use an inductive approach, we will write out the sentences. Teaching of verb through inductive approach. Kamala lifted the book and began to read. Lifted is a verb. Then to read. In this sentence, lifted and to read is the verb. Then I'll give you another example. I like to think about the time I flew to Delhi. Where are the verbs in this sentence? Like to think. I flew to. It just flew. I like to think about the time I flew to Delhi. Look at the differences between these verbs. Lifted. Lifted is an action. Kamla lifted a book. See this with some action. Then to read. Then after lifting the book, she started reading. So the action, people could see the action of what Kamla does here. But when I said, I like to think about the time I flew to Delhi, could you see what I think in my mind? You cannot see. What I think, what is going on in my mind, you cannot see. I like to think. Then, the time I flew to, it is what I'm thinking, my wishes. So from these two kinds of verbs, we can drive to our conclusion. If we have to define what verb is, verb expresses action or show the very doing of an action by someone. In these two kind of sentences, these are action verbs. So if we have to say action verbs, then it shows some kind of activity, either physical or mental. This is physical. Lifting and reading is a physical activity. But like to think, flew. I like to think is a mental process. What I think, people cannot see. So these are action verbs. Then we also have a linking verbs. Verbs linking. What type of verbs link the sentence? The words in the sentence. I read, that man was my tutor. What is the verb? Where is the verb here? If we have to see each word, we don't see any accent verbs. But was is the verb here. It links these words. That man and my tutor. So this kind of verb is known as the linking verbs. I'll give you another sentence. The plant looked wilted. Looked is the linking verb here. It is linking these two sentences, the plant and what this wilted is doing. What is the meaning of wilted here? If we say the plant looked wilted, how does the plant look? Wilted means due to lack of water or because of heat, the plant is withering, it is bending and it is dying. It is on the process of dying when we say the plant looked wilted. So this kind of verbs are linking verbs. we also do have another kind of verbs, which is helping verbs. How do we know the verbs are helping verb? If I said, will you be going to the party? The verb is this, going, but then where are the helping verbs here? Will and be. Will and be helps the verb going. So, if there is no will and be in the sentence, even if there is going the verb, we will not have a clear meaning. But then when will and be helps the main verb going, then we can have a question. We can create a question sentence. A sentence with a question. Will you be going to the party? I'll give you one more example. Look at this sentence. I could have won the game. Where is the helping verb and where is the main verb? I could have. I could have won. This is the main verb, want, the game. So, could and have helps the verb won. W-O-N. I could have won the game. From these examples, we can draw the theory. What is the helping verbs? Helping verbs works with the other verbs to form a complete phrase or to indicate a sentence or a tense. I could have won the game indicate a complete tense or a complete phrase, or it has given a complete meaning. This is how we use inductive approach in teaching grammar. But if I have to use deductive approach first, I would define what helping verb is. I would, instead of giving these examples, rather than writing out these examples, I would state helping verbs work with other verbs to form a complete phrase or to indicate tense. I would define first what helping verb is. But in deductive, this is how we define. We define first. But in inductive approach, we first give all the examples and draw a conclusion. And this is what I can tell you today about the difference between inductive approach and deductive approach.